Far away from busy cities, highways, and crowded towns, there are places where silence still rules the landscape. Deep forests stretch for miles, lakes remain undisturbed for generations, and the only sounds at night are wind moving through trees and distant animal calls. Tonight's story begins in one of those quiet places. In the late 20th century, in the state of Maine in the United States, there was a vast wilderness filled with dense forests, cold lakes, and long winters. It was the kind of place where people visited during summer vacations, bringing small cabins, boats, and fishing equipment. But during much of the year, the forests remain almost completely empty. Most people who walked through these woods believed they were alone, but they were not. Somewhere hidden among the trees lived a man who had chosen a life almost no one else could imagine. His name was Christopher Knight. In 1986, when he was just 20 years old, Christopher Knight quietly left his home and drove north into the forests of Maine. He parked his car near a small lake and walked into the woods. He carried only a few simple supplies with him. He did not tell anyone where he was going. He did not leave a note explaining his plans. He simply disappeared. At first, there was nothing unusual about a young man going camping in the forest. Many people visited Maine's wilderness for hiking, fishing, or short camping trips. But Christopher Knight never returned. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. Then months slowly became years. What nobody knew was that Christopher Knight had quietly decided to leave society behind completely. Deep inside the forest, he built a hidden campsite between large rocks and thick trees. From above, the area was almost impossible to see. He carefully arranged his camp so that smoke, light, and movement would remain hidden from anyone passing nearby. During the day, he stayed quiet. At night, he moved silently through the forest. His new life had begun. Living alone in the wilderness is far more difficult than many people imagine. Forests are beautiful, but they are also unpredictable and dangerous. Winters in Maine are long and freezing. Snow can cover the ground for months, and temperatures can drop far below zero. Most people would struggle to survive even a few weeks in such conditions. Yet Christopher Knight survived not for weeks or months. He survived for years. To stay alive, he needed food, clothing, and tools. Over time, he quietly began visiting nearby cabins when their owners were away. Many of these cabins were used only during summer vacations, meaning they remain empty during the colder seasons. Late at night, when everything was silent, Christopher Knight would approach these cabins. He moved carefully and slowly, making sure no one was nearby. Inside, he would take small amounts of food, batteries, clothing, or camping equipment. He avoided taking too much from any one place. His goal was always to remain unnoticed. Then he would disappear back into the forest. Over the years, local cabin owners began noticing strange things. Food would sometimes go missing. Batteries would disappear. Occasionally, small tools or blankets were gone. At first, many people assumed animals were responsible, but animals do not open doors or take flashlights. Still, the mystery remained unsolved for a very long time. Meanwhile, deep inside the forest, Christopher Knight lived an extremely quiet and solitary life. He rarely spoke because there was no one to speak to. In fact, during most of his time in the woods, he went months without hearing another human voice. The forest became his entire world. He learned the patterns of animals, the changing seasons, and the silent rhythm of nature. During summer, the forest was warm and full of life. In autumn, colorful leaves covered the ground. In winter, deep snow transformed the landscape into a cold, white wilderness. Through all of it, he remained hidden. Years passed quietly. 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, then 20 years. For most of that time, no one truly knew that a man was living silently among the trees. Local police occasionally investigated the strange cabin thefts, but the forest was enormous. Finding one hidden person in thousands of acres of wilderness was almost impossible. Christopher Knight had become something like a ghost. He moved quietly, left little trace, and avoided contact with everyone. But living alone for so long changes a person in many ways. Humans are social creatures. Our lives are normally filled with conversations, friendships, and shared experiences. Christopher Knight had none of these. He later explained that silence became normal for him. At first it felt unusual. Then it slowly became peaceful. The forest was quiet, but it was never truly empty. Wind moved through branches, rain touched leaves, and animals traveled silently through the darkness. Instead of city noise, his nights were filled with natural sounds. For nearly 3 decades, this hidden life continued. Then one night in 2013, everything changed. A local police officer named Terry Hughes had been investigating the mysterious cabin thefts for years. Many people believed the thief was just a clever criminal passing through the area. But Hughes suspected something different. He believed someone might actually be living in the forest permanently. So he set up a hidden alarm system inside one of the cabins that had been targeted before. If anyone entered the building, the alarm would quietly alert him. Then he waited. Days passed. Weeks passed. Finally, late one night, the alarm was triggered. Officer Hughes quickly drove toward the cabin. When he arrived, he moved quietly through the dark forest, using only a small flashlight. And there, outside the cabin, he saw a thin man carrying a bag of supplies. For the first time in nearly 3 decades, Christopher Knight was standing face to face with another human being. The moment was strangely calm. Knight did not run. He did not resist. He simply stood there quietly. Later, when people asked him why he had chosen such a life, his answer was surprisingly simple. He said he had never planned to stay away for so long. At first, he only wanted to be alone for a while. But the longer he stayed in the forest, the harder it became to return to normal life. Silence had become familiar. Solitude had become comfortable, and the outside world slowly began to feel distant and strange. Christopher Knight had lived alone in the forest for 27 years. During that time, he spoke only a few words to other people. When he was finally brought back to society, many people were fascinated by his story. Some saw him as a criminal for stealing supplies. Others saw him as a mysterious figure who had chosen a life of extreme solitude. But perhaps the most interesting part of his story is what it reveals about human nature. Most of us spend our lives surrounded by noise, technology, and constant activity. Christopher Knight spent nearly 3 decades surrounded only by trees and silence. It raises an interesting question. Could most people truly live alone like that? Would the silence feel peaceful, or would it eventually become unbearable? As you slowly drift towards sleep tonight, imagine standing in a quiet forest at night. The air is cool. The trees are tall and still. Somewhere in the distance, an owl calls softly. No cars, no phones, no voices, just the slow, quiet rhythm of nature. And somewhere deep among the trees, a small hidden camp rests quietly under the stars.